The feed was still playing when I walked onto my bridge. Every screen, every panel, every display surface on the command deck of my flagship was showing the same image. Ambassador Eleanor Grant, standing at the center of the Draven Council chamber on Savith Prime, her white diplomatic coat bright against the dark alien architecture, mid-sentence, mid-smile, mid-hope, and then a flash of blue light through her chest. She did not fall right away. That is the part I cannot stop seeing in my mind. She looked down at herself. She looked up at the broadcast lens. She looked at Earth. She looked at me. And then she was gone. My name is Nathan Cole. I hold the rank of Admiral in Earth's 9th Expeditionary Fleet. 20 years ago, I was assigned as Eleanor Grant's personal security detail during her first diplomatic posting on a frontier station. I watched her talk her way out of a hostage situation, with nothing but patience and a cup of tea. I watched her negotiate a ceasefire between two species that had been at each other for 600 years. And they put her down like an animal on live broadcast across 400 star systems. The Draven Archon, Kithis Vor, was still on screen. He was holding up her coat. He tore it in half. His translators carried his words to every corner of known space. Let the vermin know their place. My executive officer, Commander Sophie Blake, was standing at the tactical station. She had not moved since the broadcast began. Her face was blank. Her hands were flat on the console. I had served with Sophie for 11 years, and I had seen her in the middle of engine failures, hull breaches, and ambushes by pirate fleets. I had never seen her look like this. This was not fear. This was not anger. This was something older, something quieter, something that lived in the part of the human brain that our ancestors used when they picked up stones and decided that the predator stalking their children would not survive the night. Every officer on my bridge wore the same expression. No shouting. No tears. No calls for immediate action. Just that silence. You have all seen what happened. Maintain current positions. Await further orders. Do not. Not if, when. They are all pulling out. Every single one. I nodded. The machinery was already moving. Earth had a protocol for this. A protocol so old and so deeply embedded in our command structure that most of our allies and trading partners did not even know it existed. It was called blackout. Every human voice in the galaxy goes silent. Every human ship turns for home. Every human presence folds inward like a fist closing. From the outside, it looks like retreat, like cowardice, like a species that has accepted its place at the bottom of the galactic food chain. It is none of those things. I stood at the observation window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, on a cold marble floor in an alien council chamber, the body of my friend was growing cold. Somewhere out there, HFY War was celebrating his demonstration of power. Somewhere out there, 400 star systems were watching to see what the primitive little humans would do next. I thought about the first time Eleanor and I met. She was 26. I was 28. We were both stationed on a refueling platform in the Kepler corridor, and she told me over a terrible cup of synthetic coffee that her entire career goal was to make the galaxy a place where no species had to be afraid of any other species. I told her she was dreaming. She said, "Dreaming is how every real thing starts, Nathan." She believed it. She believed it so completely that she was willing to walk onto an alien world, unarmed, wearing white, broadcasting her vulnerability to the entire galaxy, because she thought that trust had to begin somewhere. And they ended her for it. At hour 3 after the broadcast, the galactic communication networks began to notice the silence. Human channels went dark one by one. Trade frequencies, cultural exchange bands, scientific collaboration feeds, all of them closing down in sequence, like lights going out in a building. The alien species that shared bandwidth with us started asking questions. The Ferrith sent 17 separate requests for status updates. The Olani, a pacifist species with deep cultural ties to several human colonies, transmitted a formal expression of concern. The Quoden merchant guilds demanded to know why their shipping contracts were being voided. Nobody answered. At hour 6, I received the transmission I had been waiting for. I read those words and felt something shift inside me. Not excitement, not satisfaction. Something colder, something final. Let me explain something to you. For 200 years, humanity had been filing census reports with the Galactic Cooperative Registry. Every species does this. You declare your population, your territory, your economic output, and your military strength. It is a formality, a way for the older civilizations to keep track of the younger ones. Every decade, we reported the same figures. 40 warships. A modest defensive force for a modest species. We lied. We lied every single time. Not because we were planning for war. We lied because humanity has a very long memory, and our history taught us one lesson above all others. The strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. We refused to be weak. So while we sent Eleanor and diplomats like her to every corner of the galaxy with open hands and warm smiles, we were building in the dark. Shipyards hidden inside hollowed asteroids, construction platforms buried in the atmospheres of gas giants, training academies on moons that did not appear on any official star chart. 40 ships is what we showed them, 12,000 is what we had. I turned to Sophie. She was already pulling up the fleet deployment interface. I gave her a nod and she began transmitting the unmask order to every hidden human military asset in the sector. Across a dozen star systems, ships that had been running silent for years powered up their drives. Weapons systems came online. Crews that had been training in secrecy for decades received their first real orders. George Adler looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Sir, I am receiving activation confirmations from fleets I did not know existed." "Nobody did," I said. That was the point. By hour 12, my tactical display had transformed. Where there had been a scattering of blue dots representing our known patrol vessels, there was now a wall of light. Ships upon ships upon ships, spreading across the sector map like a tide coming in. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, fast attack corvettes, electronic warfare platforms, and at the center of the formation, 7 dreadnoughts, each one 3 kilometers long, each one carrying enough firepower to reduce a continent to glass. Sophie stood beside me, and we looked at the display together in silence. After a long moment, she said, "Do you think she would have wanted this?" I did not answer right away. I thought about Eleanor in her white coat. I thought about her belief and trust. I thought about the way she looked into the broadcast lens in her last moment, not with fear, not with pain, but with something that looked almost like an apology. As if she was sorry that her dream had failed. As if she was sorry for what was about to come. "No," I said. "She would not have wanted this. But she is not here to stop it. And that is exactly the point." I turned to face my bridge crew. Every officer was watching me. "I want the fleet in assault formation within 48 hours, I said. "Full combat readiness. Every ship, every crew, every weapon. And I want a communication prepared for broadcast on every frequency in every language. We are going to give them a chance to make this right. One chance. And God help them if they do not take it. because we will not offer another. Sophie was already moving, issuing orders, coordinating with the other fleet commanders. The bridge became a hive of focused activity. I watched it all from the observation window, my reflection ghosting over the stars. Somewhere out there, the Draven Concord was celebrating their victory over the weak little humans. They were making jokes about it. They were using the footage of Eleanor's final moments as a demonstration of their dominance. They had no idea what they had started. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I stood before the main communications array of my flagship and recorded a message. I did not raise my voice. I did not make threats. I spoke clearly and calmly, the way Eleanor would have spoken, because the message was hers as much as it was mine. It went out on every frequency, in every direction, in all 31 galactic trade languages simultaneously. The translation engines worked for 40 minutes to prepare it. When it was ready, I pressed the transmit button myself. This is Admiral Nathan Cole, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Government and the people of Earth. 72 hours ago, Ambassador Eleanor Grant was struck down in the council chamber of the Draven Concord on Savath Prime during a lawful diplomatic session, while broadcasting live to 400 star systems. This act was ordered by Archon HFY War in the presence of the full Concord Council. It was not an accident. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act of aggression against a diplomatic representative operating under the protections of the Galactic Charter of Sovereign Communication. I paused. The recording equipment hummed softly. Earth demands the following. First, the immediate and unconditional surrender of Archon HFY War and every individual who participated in the act. Second, a formal acknowledgement of the act as a breach of galactic law, broadcast on every channel that carried the original footage. Third, full and unrestricted passage rights through all Concord-controlled space for all human vessels, civilian and military, in perpetuity, as Ambassador Grant proposed before she was silenced. I looked directly into the recording lens. You have 72 hours to comply. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy. You have 72 hours to choose the shape of your future. After that, we choose it for you. I ended the recording. George Adler confirmed it was transmitting. Then I went to the officers' mess, sat down, and ate a meal I did not taste, because a commanding officer eats when food is available regardless of appetite. That is a lesson the military teaches you early. Within 3 hours, the galactic networks were on fire, not with human voices, because we were still silent on all civilian channels. The noise was coming from everyone else. The Ferrith reached out through back channels, their ambassador practically begging to open a dialogue. The Olani issued a public statement calling for calm. The Quodon merchant guilds began quietly moving their assets out of Concord space, which told me everything I needed to know about what the financial minds of the galaxy thought was about to happen. The species that were not part of the Concord watched from the sidelines with a mixture of concern and fascination. A Ferrith diplomatic courier arrived at our outer perimeter at hour 9. I allowed her aboard. She was tall and willowy, with pale silver skin that shifted color with her emotions. Right now, it was dark gray. Fear. Admiral Cole, she said, standing in my ready room, with her hands pressed together in the Ferrith gesture of urgent sincerity. You cannot fight the Concord. They have controlled this region of space for 8,000 years. No single species has ever successfully challenged them. I offered her a chair. She did not sit. No single species has ever had a reason to, I said. Her skin rippled to an even darker shade. You do not understand. They will not take your ultimatum seriously. They see you as a lesser species. They will not comply. I know, I said. Then why send it? Because Eleanor would have wanted me to give them the chance, I said. Even if I already know the answer, she would have wanted the chance to exist. The Ferrith diplomat studied me for a long moment. Then she said something I did not expect. You are not angry. I am beyond angry, I told her. Anger is loud and hot, and it burns itself out. What I feel is quiet. It does not burn out. It builds. She left my ship 20 minutes later. I learned afterward that she transmitted a single message to the Ferrith homeworld. The humans are not retreating. They are gathering. Prepare for what comes next. The hours ticked past. I used them. I toured every deck of my flagship. I walked through the engineering bays where Chief Warrant Officer Henry Calloway and his team were running final checks on every system. I watched them work in focused silence, their tools moving with practiced precision. When Henry saw me, he straightened up and said, "She is ready, Admiral. Every system is at peak performance. If you need us to hold together through whatever comes next, we will hold." I walked through the fighter bays where pilots sat in their cockpits running simulation after simulation, their faces lit by the glow of targeting displays. I walked through the medical bay, where the surgical teams were preparing for casualties, with the grim efficiency of people who hoped they would not be needed, but knew they would be. I walked through the mess hall, where cooks were preparing food in silence. There was no music playing. There had not been any music on any human ship since the broadcast. I found our chaplain, Captain Ruth Denning, in the small interfaith chapel on Deck 7. She was not praying, she was sitting in the front row, staring at the simple wooden cross on the wall. "Admiral," she said without turning around, "I have been trying to write a service for the crew, something to give them strength before what is coming. But every time I start, I keep thinking about her standing there in that chamber, and the words will not come." I sat down beside her. "What do you need?" "I need to know that what we are about to do is right," she said. I thought about that for a long time. Then I said, "Ruth, I do not know if it is right. I know it is necessary. And I know that Eleanor walked into that chamber because she believed that the galaxy could be better than it is. Someone took that belief and destroyed it in front of the whole universe. If we do nothing, then every diplomat who ever walks onto a foreign world will know that their life means nothing, that they can be removed whenever it is convenient. Eleanor cannot speak anymore, so we speak for her, and we make sure the galaxy listens." Ruth nodded slowly. Then she stood up, squared her shoulders, and went to write her service. At hour 40, the intelligence reports started coming in. Commander Ian Frost, my intelligence officer, briefed me in private. The Concorde was preparing for a confrontation, but their preparations told me everything about how they expected this to go. They were positioning their defense fleets in standard formation around their core worlds. Textbook deployment. Predictable patterns. The kind of arrangement you use when you expect a small, conventional attack from a small, conventional enemy. "They still think we have 40 ships," Ian said. "Good," I replied. He pulled up a tactical overlay. The Concorde's combined fleet strength was approximately 14,000 vessels spread across 19 star systems. On paper, they outnumbered us. But paper does not fight wars. "There is something else," Ian said. He brought up intercepted communications from the Concorde Council. They were not encrypted, which told me the Concorde did not consider us a serious enough threat to bother hiding their discussions from us. The intercepts showed the council members congratulating each other. One Draven admiral referred to humanity as a species with the spine of wet paper. Another suggested that our ultimatum was a bluff, designed to save face before our inevitable full retreat from galactic affairs. HFY War himself had given a speech to his military commanders. I read the translated transcript. "The humans are soft creatures from a soft world," he said. "They have built their entire civilization on cooperation and communication because they lack the strength for anything else. Their ambassador came to us with open hands, and we showed the galaxy what happens to open hands. Now they send threats because threats are all they have. When the deadline passes and nothing happens, the galaxy will see them for what they truly are, prey that has forgotten its place." I read it twice. Then I set the tablet down and looked at Ian. "A soft world," I said. Ian almost smiled. "Almost. Earth, where 90% of all species that have ever existed went extinct. Earth, where the dominant predators include bacteria that can survive in boiling acid. Earth, where the weather can flatten cities and the ground can open up and swallow them. A soft world." I did not smile, but something settled in my chest. A certainty, an alignment between what I felt and what I knew had to happen. At hour 68, the Concorde responded to our ultimatum. HFY War appeared on a public broadcast. He was sitting on a throne made of materials I did not recognize, flanked by his generals, wearing ceremonial armor that glittered under artificial light. He held up Eleanor's torn white coat, the same one he had ripped apart on live broadcast 3 days ago. "Come, little humans," he said. "We have been ending species since before your world had fire." The broadcast cut to static. On my bridge, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 4 hours remained. I spent 3 of those hours alone in my quarters. I sat at my desk and opened a sealed file on my personal console. Inside was a photograph, Eleanor and me at the academy, 20 years ago, standing in front of the main building, squinting in the sunlight, laughing about something I can no longer remember. I looked at that photograph for a long time. Then I closed the file. I stood up. I put on my dress uniform, because what we were about to do deserved the formality. I walked to the bridge. My officers stood when I entered. I waved them back to their stations. "George," I said, "open a fleet-wide channel. All ships, all crews, all decks." "Channel open, sir." I took a breath. "All ships. This is Admiral Cole. The deadline has passed. The Concorde has refused every term. They have made their choice. Now we make ours. All fleet elements, weapons free. Engage all designated targets according to Operation Eleanor's voice. You know what to do. You know why we are doing it. Be precise, be thorough, and bring everyone home. Cole out." Sophie was watching me from the tactical station. She said quietly, "Are you all right?" I looked at the stars through the observation window. Somewhere out there, the largest military operation in human history was about to begin, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. "No," I said, "I am not all right, but that does not matter anymore." The Concorde expected us to come in small. They expected 40 ships, maybe 50 if we had built a few more since the last census. They expected us to probe their defenses, test their outer perimeters, maybe launch a few symbolic strikes to satisfy our pride before we came to the negotiating table with our heads down. They did not expect 12,000 warships to appear in 19 star systems at the same time. The synchronization alone should have been impossible. That is what the analysts said afterward. Coordinating simultaneous fleet arrivals across 19 different star systems requires a level of precision in faster-than-light navigation that no known species had demonstrated. The Draven used sequential deployment, arriving at each target one after another, because the computational demands of synchronized multi-system entry were considered beyond the reach of any existing technology. We had solved that problem 40 years ago. We just never told anyone. At 0 hour, I sat in my command chair on the bridge of my flagship and watched the tactical display transform. 19 star systems, 19 simultaneous arrivals, 12,000 ships emerging from faster-than-light transit, in perfect formation, each fleet element exactly where it was supposed to be, not a single ship out of position. The display lit up like a constellation being born. Sophie called out the confirmations as they came in. Eighth through 12th, confirmed at shipyards, supply depots, and communication relay stations across the outer territories. It was a demonstration. It was an elegant formation, refined over millennia of warfare, against species that fought the way the Concord expected everyone to fight. Approach from the front, exchange fire, negotiate when losses become unacceptable. Our first strike group numbered 300 ships. The Concord commanders saw our numbers and felt confident. 4-to-1 odds in their favor. They broadcast a warning telling us to withdraw or face destruction. They moved like wolves. Small groups of fast corvettes swept in from unexpected angles, drawing fire and disrupting formation integrity. While the Concord ships were turning to track these smaller threats, our electronic warfare platforms blanketed the area with targeted interference that severed the communication links between Concord vessels. Each ship became isolated, unable to coordinate with its neighbors. Then our cruisers came in, not from the front, but from below and behind, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Not to destroy, to disable. To leave 1,200 warships floating dark and powerless in the void, their crews alive but their ability to fight completely neutralized. Ian Frost was monitoring the Concord communications from his station. He looked up at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Something between disbelief and awe. "They are panicking," he said. "Their command structure is collapsing. They have never experienced anything like this. Their tactical doctrine has no protocols for an enemy that moves this fast and hits from this many directions simultaneously." I nodded. I knew this would happen. The Concord had fought wars for 8,000 years, but they had always fought species that played by the same rules they did. Display warfare, ritualized engagement, limited escalation. They had never encountered a species that treated warfare the way humanity does. Let me explain something about us, about our history, about why we fight the way we fight. The ground shook and tore itself apart. The oceans rose and fell like a breathing chest. The other species we shared our world with were faster than us, stronger than us, equipped with natural weapons we could never match. We had no claws, no armor, no venom. What we had was endurance. We could run longer than any other creature on our world, not faster, longer. We would pick a target and follow it across entire continents, walking and walking again, hour after hour, day after day, until the thing we were chasing simply collapsed from exhaustion. Then we would finish it. Our ancestors called it persistence hunting. It is the oldest military doctrine in human history, and it never changed. The tools evolved. Stones became spears, became guns, became ships, became fleets. But the principle remained the same. Pick your target. Pursue without stopping. Do not rest until the job is complete. The Concord fought wars that lasted decades, with long pauses for negotiation and regrouping. At Dreven Core, the Concord's second-largest military installation, our second strike group disabled the orbital defense grid in 7 minutes by targeting the power distribution nodes that connected the grid's weapons platforms. Without power, the platforms were nothing but floating metal. Our Marines boarded the station and secured it without a single casualty on either side. At the Kethis Corridor, our 3rd through 7th strike groups swept through 5 star systems in rapid succession, disabling every Concord warship, every weapons platform, every military communications relay they encountered. Each engagement followed the same pattern: isolate, disrupt, disable. Never destroy if disabling was possible. This was not mercy, it was strategy. Every disabled ship was a message. We can reach you wherever you are. We can take away everything you use to threaten others, and we do not need to end a single life to do it. By hour 6 of the operation, the Concorde had lost functional control of 60% of their military assets. Their communications were fragmented. Their command structure was in disarray. Individual fleet commanders were making independent decisions because they could not reach central authority. Some of those independent decisions were to surrender. At Selkari Prime, the home system of one of the Concorde's member species, the local defense fleet commander opened a channel to our 8th strike group and offered unconditional surrender before a single shot was fired. He had seen the reports from Savath Prime and Dreven Core. He knew what was coming, and he chose not to face it. Colonel Grace Whitfield, commanding the Marine contingent attached to the 8th Strike Group, handled the surrender personally. She accepted the Selkari commander's terms, secured his vessels, and moved on. No speeches, no gloating, just professional efficiency, and then the next objective. Other Concorde forces chose to fight. At the Vorath shipyards, the largest military construction facility in Concorde space, a garrison of 2,000 Draven warships formed up for a full defensive engagement. They fought with discipline and courage, I will give them that. They held their formation under pressure, adapted when they could, and refused to surrender even when the outcome was obvious. It took our 10th and 11th strike groups 4 hours to disable the Vorath garrison. 4 hours of precise, methodical work, peeling away layers of defense, neutralizing weapon systems, severing command links. When it was over, 2,000 Draven warships were floating silent in the void, their crews alive, their pride shattered, their ability to fight gone. I stood on my bridge and watched the tactical display update in real time. Blue markers advanced across the map. Red markers went dark one after another. The shape of the galaxy was changing before my eyes. Sophie came to stand beside me. She was holding a data tablet with the latest casualty reports. "Our losses," she said. 14 ships with significant damage, 31 with minor damage, 47 crew members in critical care. No confirmed fatalities on our side. I closed my eyes for a moment. 47 people in critical care was 47 too many. But in an operation of this scale, against an enemy with 8,000 years of military experience, those numbers were extraordinary. We had prepared, we had trained, we had built our ships and our tactics for exactly this scenario. "And the Concorde casualties?" I asked. Sophie checked the tablet. 0 confirmed fatalities across all engagement zones. Approximately 6,000 Concorde military personnel being treated for minor injuries sustained during disabling actions. I let that sink in. 12,000 human warships, 19 star systems, 14,000 enemy vessels engaged, and not a single confirmed loss of life on either side. The Concorde called us a primitive persistent species. They expected us to come screaming and flailing, throwing ourselves against their defenses in a rage-fueled act of self-destruction. Instead, we came with precision, we came with restraint, we came with the cold, quiet competence of a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to overcome things bigger and stronger than itself. By hour 12, reports started coming in from the neutral species. The Ferrith had assembled an emergency council session. The Olani had placed their entire civilization on alert, not because they feared us, but because they were witnessing something that their historical models said was impossible. A younger species dismantling an 8,000-year-old military power in less than a day. The Quoden Merchant Guild sent us a single transmission, encrypted on a commercial channel. It contained one word in their trade language that roughly translates to congratulations, but with an undertone of terror. By hour 18, the Concorde's military capability was reduced to 20% of its pre-war strength. Their remaining functional ships were scattered, disorganized, and cut off from central command. Individual Concorde species were beginning to break away, opening separate channels to negotiate their own surrenders. But HFY War was still out there. The Archon of the Draven, the one who gave the order, the one who held up Eleanor's coat and tore it apart, the one who called us prey. His personal fleet had vanished from Savath Prime before our first strike group arrived. He had run. Ian Frost came to my ready room at hour 20, with a briefing I had been expecting. "We have confirmed that HFY War evacuated Savath Prime approximately 2 hours before our arrival." He used a series of faster-than-light jumps through uncharted corridors to mask his trajectory. "Current location unknown." I leaned back in my chair. He knew we were coming. Ian nodded. "Our analysis suggests that the Archon maintained a private intelligence network separate from the Concorde's official channels. He likely detected the fleet mobilization and drew the correct conclusion before his own military did." "Smart," I said. "Smart enough to run," Ian agreed. "Not smart enough to run far enough. How long until we find him?" "We have already deployed the Hunter Network," Ian said. "It is only a matter of time." The Hunter Network. Another thing the galaxy did not know about. Microdrones. Each one no larger than a grain of sand, capable of autonomous operation, self-replication, and faster-than-light communication with each other. We deployed them by the billions. They spread through star systems like pollen, settling on every ship, every station, every surface, scanning, cataloging, and reporting back. The largest surveillance apparatus ever constructed by any species, designed to do what humanity has always done best: track, follow, find. I dismissed Ian and sat alone in my ready room. On my desk was a framed photograph of Eleanor and me at the academy. I picked it up and held it. "We are coming for him, Ellie," I said to the empty room. "Not because we want revenge, because what he did cannot stand. Because if the galaxy learns that you can end a diplomat and face no consequences, then every peace, every treaty, every handshake between species becomes meaningless. Your dream of a galaxy without borders only works if there is a cost for those who try to build walls with blood." I set the photograph down and went back to the bridge. The war was 3 weeks old now. 3 weeks since the ultimatum expired. The Concorde was functionally dismantled as a military power. 6 of the 7 member species had individually surrendered. Only the Draven holdouts remained, scattered remnants loyal to HFY, hiding in deep space, refusing to accept what had already happened. And the galaxy was watching everything. Every species, every world, every civilization with access to a communications array was watching humanity with new eyes. The primitive persistence predators had just dismantled the most powerful military coalition in known space in less than a month, without taking a single life. Nobody knew what to make of it. A colony world, Draven civilian population, approximately 2 million individuals, families, children, non-combatants who had played no part in the Council's decision. Colonel Whitfield handled it. She landed a small diplomatic team on the surface and met with the governor, a Draven elder who had opposed the Concorde's aggressive policies for decades. He told Grace that his people wanted no part of what HFY had done. He asked only that his people be left unharmed. Grace contacted me directly. Admiral, the colony is cooperating fully. They have disarmed voluntarily, requesting permission to provide humanitarian assistance. They are running low on medical supplies and their food distribution network was disrupted when we disabled the regional logistics relay. I gave the order without hesitation. Provide whatever they need. Medical teams, food supplies, engineering support to restore their infrastructure. Full humanitarian aid. Sir, there are elements in the fleet who might question providing aid to a Draven population. Then they can question it to my face, I said. We did not come here to harm civilians. We came here because a man in a position of power decided that our diplomat's life meant nothing. The people on that colony did not make that decision. They are not our enemy. Is that clear, Colonel? Clear, sir. We provided the aid. We restored their medical systems, replenished their food stores, and repaired their communications array so they could contact their families on other worlds. When our teams left the colony, the Draven governor sent a message. It said simply, "We did not know humans could be like this." I read it 3 times. Then I filed it and moved on, because there was still work to do. The Hunter Network found HFY War on day 41. He was hiding on a rogue planetoid in the deep space between star systems. A rock drifting in the void with no star to orbit. No warmth. No light, except what was generated by the underground facility carved into its core. It was a personal bunker, unknown to the Concord's official records, built decades ago as a refuge of last resort. Ian Frost delivered the intelligence briefing in my ready room at 0600 hours. The facility is extensive, he said, projecting a 3-dimensional map onto the display. Approximately 4 kilometers of tunnels carved into the planetoid's interior. Defensive emplacements at every access point. The Archon has approximately 10,000 Draven loyalists with him, the last true believers. They are heavily armed and deeply entrenched. I studied the map. Can we disable the facility from orbit? Same approach as the fleet engagements. Ian shook his head. The facility is too deep underground. Our shipboard systems cannot penetrate the rock with enough precision to disable, without risking structural collapse. If the tunnels come down, everyone inside is buried, including HFY War. I wanted him standing in front of every broadcast lens in the galaxy, answering for what he did. A body under a mountain of rubble does not answer questions. A body under rubble becomes a martyr. Eleanor deserved better than giving her killer the dignity of a dramatic end. Ground assault, then, I said. Colonel Whitfield is already preparing her operational plan, Ian confirmed. She requests a meeting at 0800. Grace Whitfield was waiting for me in the Tactical Operations Center 2 hours later. She had the map of the underground facility displayed on the main screen, annotated with entry points, defensive positions, and estimated enemy force concentrations. "Admiral," she said, "we can take this facility. It will not be easy, and it will not be fast, but we can do it." "Casualties?" I asked. Grace was direct, as always. "On our side, I am projecting minimal casualties if we execute correctly." "On the Draven side," she paused, "that depends on them. If they surrender when the position becomes untenable, the numbers stay low. If they fight to the last, there will be losses." "10,000 individuals who believed so deeply in Kythosfor's vision of galactic dominance that they had followed him into a hole in a rock in the middle of nowhere, rather than surrender. Some of them were probably true fanatics. Some of them were probably just scared and did not know what else to do." "Rules of engagement," I said. "Disable and detain. Offer surrender at every stage of the advance. If they put down their weapons, they are to be treated as prisoners of war under Earth's military code. Medical attention for anyone who needs it. No exceptions." Grace nodded. "Understood, sir." We launched the ground operation the following morning. I watched from the command bridge as Grace led her Marines to the surface of the planetoid. Transport ships descended through the thin, freezing atmosphere and touched down at 4 points around the facility's surface access hatches. The Marines deployed in their exo-armor, moving with the practiced coordination of people who had spent years preparing for this moment. The outer defenses were the first challenge. The Draven had set up automated weapons platforms at every entrance. Grace's breaching teams disabled them with targeted electromagnetic pulses that fried the targeting systems without damaging the tunnel structures. The platforms went silent. The way in was open. The tunnel fighting was methodical. Room by room, junction by junction, Grace's Marines advanced through the facility. At each defensive position, they offered the Draven a chance to surrender. Approximately 40% accepted, laying down their weapons and submitting to detention. The rest fell back to the next position. I monitored the operation through the real-time feeds from the Marines' helmet cameras. I watched Grace move through those tunnels with absolute focus, directing her teams, calling out threats, making decisions in fractions of seconds. She was remarkable. The kind of officer that Eleanor would have admired. Because Grace carried the same quality Eleanor had, the ability to remain human in inhuman circumstances. The deeper we went, the more resistance we encountered. The Draven loyalists who had not surrendered were consolidating in the lower levels, forming a final defensive line around the Archon's personal chambers. They were fighting hard, using the narrow tunnels and heavy doors to slow our advance. Grace adapted. She brought in her engineering teams to cut through walls rather than assault through defended doorways. She used sensor drones to map the defenders' positions in real time, allowing her teams to approach from unexpected angles. The same principles that governed our fleet tactics applied here. Do not attack where they expect you. Do not play by their rules. Find another way. "6,000 Draven loyalists were in custody, being treated fairly and receiving medical attention for any injuries. Our casualties were minimal. Grace was running the operation like a surgeon, precise and careful. Then we reached the lowest level, HFY War's personal chamber. Grace contacted me directly. "Admiral, we are at the final position. The Archon is inside with approximately 200 personal guards. The door is sealed. We can breach it, but I wanted to check with you first." I opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Cole. We have located the primary objective. Colonel Whitfield is preparing to secure the target. Maintain positions and stand by." Then I switched back to Grace's channel. "Colonel, breach when ready." Grace's Marines poured through in a choreographed wave, moving in pairs, covering each other, controlling the space with practiced efficiency. The 200 guards inside the chamber were overwhelmed in minutes. Most surrendered when they saw the sheer professionalism of the force they were facing. A few attempted to resist and were quickly restrained. And there, at the center of it all, sitting on a chair made from trophies taken from species the Concord had defeated over millennia, was HFY War. I saw him through Grace's helmet camera. He was smaller than he looked on his broadcasts. The ceremonial armor was gone, replaced by a simple military uniform. His eyes, the large, dark, lidless eyes of the Draven species, watched the Marines approach with an expression I could not quite read. Grace walked up to him. She did not raise her weapon. She did not shout. She stood in front of the being who had ordered the end of our ambassador and said, in a voice as calm and steady as the tide, Archon Kythis Vor, by the authority of the United Earth Government, and in accordance with the Articles of the Galactic Charter of Sovereign Communication, you are under arrest for the unlawful taking of a diplomatic representative. You will be transported to stand trial before a galactic tribunal. You will be treated fairly and afforded all rights under galactic law. Kythis Vor looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "You think this changes anything?" Grace did not answer him. She stepped aside, and her Marines secured him. I sat back in my command chair and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 41 days. Sophie touched my arm. "It is done," she said softly. "No," I said, "not yet. The trial. The trial is the point. Everything we have done, every ship we deployed, every tunnel we cleared, it was all so that this moment could happen in the light, in front of everyone. Because Eleanor did not walk onto that platform in white, so that we could end her killer in the dark. She walked onto that platform because she believed in a galaxy where justice existed, where accountability existed, where the powerful could not simply remove whoever they wanted without consequence. We were going to give her that galaxy, even if she was not here to see it. It was held on a neutral station in Ferrith space, chosen because the Ferrith had the longest unbroken tradition of judicial proceedings in the galaxy. Representatives from 30 species served on the tribunal. The broadcasts went out on every channel, in every language, to every inhabited world that had the technology to receive them. The same channels that had carried Eleanor's final moments now carried the judgment of the being who ended them. Kythis Vor was given a defense advocate, a Draven legal scholar who argued that the Archon's actions, while regrettable, were within the traditional authority of a sitting Concord leader to refuse diplomatic engagement by any means deemed appropriate. It was a weak argument, and everyone in that chamber knew it, but the advocate made it with dignity and thoroughness, because that is what a fair trial requires. The defense must be heard, even when the outcome is obvious. Especially when the outcome is obvious. The prosecution presented evidence. The broadcast footage, the communication records, the Archon's own public statements, including his invitation for humanity to come and fight, testimonies from Concord officials who confirmed that the act was premeditated, that HFY War had planned it weeks in advance, as a demonstration of Concord supremacy. And then they called me to testify. I stood at the witness platform and looked across the chamber at HFY War. He held my gaze. I will give him that. Whatever else he was not a coward in that moment. The lead prosecutor, an Olani jurist named Kaeleth, asked me to describe my relationship with Ambassador Grant. We corresponded regularly. The last communication I received from her was 2 days before her arrival at Savath Prime. She told me she was nervous but hopeful. She said she believed this could be the beginning of something important. A new era of cooperation between humanity and the Concord. I paused. She was right about it being the beginning of something, I said. She was wrong about what? Kaeleth asked me about the military operation, about the scale of the response, the decision to disable rather than destroy, the humanitarian aid provided to Draven civilian populations. I answered each question carefully and completely. I described the doctrine of proportional disabling that governed our entire campaign. I described the standing orders against targeting civilian infrastructure. I described the medical assistance and food supplies we provided to the Draven colony world. I described Grace Whitfield's rules of engagement during the ground operation at the planetoid, the repeated offers of surrender, the fair treatment of prisoners. I wanted the galaxy to see not just what we did, but how we did it. I wanted them to understand that humanity's strength was not in our ability to destroy. It was in our ability to choose not to. When Kaeleth finished her questions, she asked if I had anything else to add. I looked at HFY War one more time. Then I looked at the broadcast lenses that were carrying this moment to every corner of known space. Ambassador Grant walked onto that platform unarmed, I said. She wore white because in our culture, white represents peace and new beginnings. She carried no weapons. She had no shields. She brought nothing with her except her words and her belief that the galaxy could be better. She trusted that the protections of diplomatic law would be honored. She trusted that the Concord, for all its power, would respect the basic principle that those who come in peace should be met with peace. I let those words settle in the chamber. That trust was destroyed, I said, not just her trust. The trust of every species that has ever sent a representative to speak on its behalf. The trust that makes diplomacy possible. The trust that makes peace possible. Everything humanity did in response to that act was done to repair what was broken. Not through conquest, not through domination, through consequence. Through demonstrating to the galaxy that there is a cost for destroying trust, and that cost is absolute. I stepped down from the witness platform. On the 9th day, the tribunal delivered its verdict. Guilty on all charges. The sentence was permanent exile on a barren world, isolated from all communication and contact. Not a comfortable exile, not a symbolic one, a real one, on a cold rock orbiting a dim star at the edge of charted space, where HFY War would spend the rest of his natural life contemplating what he had done. Not execution. This was the point that many in the galaxy did not understand. Humanity had the power to demand execution. We had the military strength to impose any sentence we wanted. The tribunal would have agreed to whatever we asked, because every species on that panel had spent the last 2 months watching us dismantle the most powerful military coalition in their history. We chose exile. We argued for it specifically. The prosecutor from Earth's legal delegation explained our position to the tribunal in terms I had approved personally. Execution would make him a symbol, she said, a rallying point for those who share his beliefs. The last defiant act of a fallen leader, remembered and romanticized by future generations, who will forget the crime and remember only the punishment. We do not want that. We want him to live. We want him to sit on his barren rock and watch the galaxy he tried to dominate continue without him. We want every aspiring tyrant in every civilization to know that the price of destroying trust is not a quick end. It is a long silence, a long irrelevance, a long time to think about what you have lost and why you lost it. The tribunal agreed. After the verdict, I returned to my flagship. The fleet was standing down. Ships were returning to their home stations, their hidden anchorages, their construction platforms in the deep dark. The war, such as it was over. I stood on the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Sophie found me there, as she always seemed to at moments like this. The Ferrith ambassador has been in contact, she said. They have proposed naming the trade corridor through former Concord space after Ambassador Grant. The Hargrove Corridor, open to all species, no restrictions, no tariffs, no barriers. Exactly what Eleanor proposed in her address to the council. I did not say anything for a long time. I watched the stars and I thought about Eleanor standing on that platform, talking about a galaxy without borders, and I thought about how the galaxy she described was now being built in her name. That is fitting, I said finally. Make it happen. The dedication ceremony was held 3 months later, on Savath Prime, on the exact spot where Eleanor fell. I stood in the front row, alongside dignitaries from 200 species. The Ferrith delegation was there in full ceremonial dress. The Olani had sent their highest spiritual leader, an honor they had not bestowed on any non-Olani event in 4,000 years. Even the Draven were represented, a small delegation from the civilian colony that Grace's forces had aided during the operation, led by the elder governor who had voluntarily disarmed. The memorial was simple. A stone marker set into the marble floor where Eleanor had stood. Engraved on it, in every galactic trade language, were the words from her unfinished address, "A galaxy without borders." I stood in front of that stone, and I read those words in language after language, script after script, the same idea expressed in 31 different ways. And I thought about how ideas are strange things. You can silence the person who speaks them. You can tear their coat and mock their memory. But you cannot silence the idea itself. Ideas are not people. They do not fall when struck. They do not go quiet. They grow louder. After the ceremony, species I had never heard of began reaching out to Earth through the newly established Hargrove Corridor. Trade proposals, cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, the very things Eleanor had championed. The galaxy was rearranging itself, and the shape it was settling into looked remarkably like the one Eleanor had described in her proposal. Humanity did not claim a single world. We did not annex a single system. We did not take a single resource, or demand a single concession, beyond the ones outlined in our original ultimatum. The passage rights, the formal acknowledgement, the accountability. That was all we asked for, and it was all we took. This, more than anything else we did, was what terrified the galaxy. The neutral species could comprehend a conqueror. They had frameworks for understanding an empire that expands, that takes, that imposes its will on the conquered. They had seen it before, countless times across the millennia. They had never seen a species that could take everything and chose to take nothing. The Ferrith began calling us Calith Vor. In their oldest mythology, the term refers to a force of correction that exists outside the normal rules of the universe. It activates when a fundamental wrong has been committed, rights the wrong, and then withdraws. It does not stay, it does not rule, it does not conquer. It simply ensures that the cost of wrongdoing is real, and then it steps back. The Olani, with their characteristic thoughtfulness, used a different term, Suneth, those who choose. Because what they found most remarkable about humanity was not our military capability, but our decision to constrain it. To disable instead of destroy. To capture instead of execute. to aid civilians of a species that had wronged us. Every step of our response had been a choice, and every choice had been measured, deliberate, and calibrated to achieve justice rather than dominance. The Draven, the remnants of HFY War's once mighty civilization, had their own word for us. Veroth. In their language, it means consequence. The thing that follows when you break the rules that hold the world together, not punishment, not revenge, just the natural, inevitable result of your own actions. I thought about these names, these attempts by other species to categorize what we are, and I realized that none of them captured the full truth. We are not a mythological force. We are not a philosophical concept. We are people, complicated, contradictory, imperfect people who carry both the capacity for extraordinary compassion and extraordinary resolve in the same heart. We do not see a contradiction in that. We never have. A year after the war, I stood on the observation deck of my flagship for the last time. My commission was ending. I had requested retirement, and the Defense Council had granted it. The fleet I had commanded, the fleet that had reshaped the galactic order, was being redistributed. Some ships would return to their hidden anchorages. Others would take up patrol routes along the Hargrove corridor, ensuring that the free passage Eleanor had envisioned remained free. Sophie was there. She was taking command of the fleet, a promotion she had earned 10 times over. "Before you go," she said, "there is something you should know. I received a communication from the Draven colony world this morning, the one we provided aid to during the campaign." "What did it say?" "They are building a school," she said. "They are naming it after Eleanor. The governor said he wants his children to learn about the woman who came in peace, and the species that honored her memory, by showing both strength and kindness." I stood there for a long time, looking at the stars. Then a young officer approached, Lieutenant Peter Marsh, fresh from the academy, barely old enough to shave. He was nervous, clearly, working up the courage to say something. "Admiral," he said, "I wanted to ask you something before you leave. Everyone says you are the one who broke the Concord, the one who changed the galaxy. And I just wanted to know, was it worth it? Everything we did, everything that happened, was it worth it?" I thought about the stone marker on Savath Prime, with her words carved into it. I thought about the school on a Draven colony world. I thought about 12,000 ships and the silence before the storm. I thought about HFY War sitting alone on his barren rock, slowly understanding that the galaxy had moved on without him. I thought about a young woman on a refueling platform 20 years ago, telling me over a cup of terrible coffee that dreaming is how every real thing starts. "Ask the next ambassador who walks onto a foreign world unarmed and comes home alive," I said. "Ask her if it was worth it." Peter nodded slowly, the way young people do when they are filing something away for later. I passed officers and crew who saluted and wished me well. I shook hands and returned salutes and said things I meant but cannot fully remember now. In my quarters, I packed the photograph of Eleanor and me at the academy. I packed the framed copy of the Hargrove Corridor Treaty. I packed a small stone from the surface of the planetoid where we found HFY War, a stone I picked up because I wanted something to hold when the memories became too heavy. Then I sat at my desk and wrote a final entry in my personal log. Not for the fleet archives, not for the historians, for Eleanor. Ellie, I wrote. The corridor has your name on it. Ships from species we have never heard of are flying through it every day, trading and talking and learning about each other, exactly the way you described. There is a school with your name on a Draven world, teaching children that peace and strength are not opposites. The galaxy is not perfect, it never will be, but it is better than it was, and it is better because of you. But I think, in a way, you always knew you would not be. I think that is why you looked into the lens at the end. You were not looking at me. You were looking at the future. You were telling us to build it anyway. We did, Ellie. We are still building it. I set down the pen. I picked up my bag. I walked off the ship and into the light of an unfamiliar star, and I carried her with me. My name is Nathan Cole. I commanded the fleet that broke the Draven Concord. And if anyone out there is listening, in whatever corner of whatever civilization, let me leave you with this. We did not do what we did because we love war. We did it because we loved her. We did it because humanity does not accept the silencing of hope. Do not threaten the ones who walk into your halls with open hands and good intentions. Because we are the species that chased its prey across continents with nothing but patience and will. We are the species that split the atom and then chose not to end ourselves. We are the species that crossed the empty void between stars because we needed to know what was out there. And we are the species that will remember your name long after you have forgotten your own.